Shabbat Shalom. On the sixth day, God turned to the archangel Gabriel and said, "Today I am going to create a land called Canada. And it will be an outstanding land of natural beauty. It shall have tall, majestic mountains, beautiful sparkling lakes, bountiful with bass and trout, forests full of elk and moose, high cliffs overlooking sandy beaches with an abundance of sea life, rivers stocked with salmon." God continued, "And I shall make the land rich with oil so as to make the inhabitants prosper. And I shall call these inhabitants Canadians, and they shall be known as the most friendly, the kindest people on the earth." "But Lord," asked Gabriel, "don't you think you're being just a little too generous with these Canadians?" "Not really," replied God. "Just wait till I make their neighbors." I want to rewind a few weeks back to the beginning of our Torah reading, to creation, the story of Breshit, and slowly we'll make our way forward to our Parsha and to the times in which we're living. For our nation, the south of Canada, elections represent a new beginning. They are a recreation. They offer the opportunity of starting over, of improving what's working, of correcting our mistakes, of addressing our shortcomings, and when necessary, charting a new course. When it comes to creation, the Torah, thank God, gives us a roadmap and a model. Recall, when God began creating the universe, at first there was chaos, tohu vavohu. The world was unformed and void. But God sorted it out, separating light from darkness, water from land, and God looked out, and it was good. Vayar Elohim ki tov. It was good until it wasn't. Until along came Adam and Eve's sin in the garden. Until along came Cain, who killed Abel. Until along came the generation of the flood, who were so evil. Until along came the generation of Babel, who were so arrogant. And God grew more and more frustrated and disappointed with what God had created, until along came Abraham. In choosing Abraham, God took a different approach to addressing the shortcomings of what God had created. Rather than exile Adam and Cain, or destroy the generation of Noah, or disperse the inhabitants of Babel, God would form a covenant, a special relationship with Abraham and his descendants. That covenant charged Abraham and his descendants, the Jewish people, to be God's eyes and ears and hands to complete creation, to fashion a world in which God would choose to dwell. Abraham was chosen specifically because God saw in him the tikkun, the fix to the flaws that had preceded him. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs explains it this way: Adam said, "That apple thing, that wasn't my fault, it was hers. She made me eat it." Cain said, "I don't care if he's my brother." Noah said, "I'm responsible for myself alone." And the generation of the Tower of Babel said, "We're answerable to no one but ourselves." So what happened? Adam lost paradise. Cain was condemned to wander. Noah declined into drunkenness, and Babel was left unbuilt. And so God said, I need a different way. I need to partner with a person, and later with a people, who will each take and teach responsibility. In the light of Adam, I want a people to take and to teach personal responsibility. In the light of Cain, people to take and teach moral responsibility. In light of Noah, for people to take and teach collective responsibility. And in light of the generations of Babel, a people to take and to teach what Sachs calls ontological responsibility. The idea that we are each accountable to something or someone beyond ourselves. Enter Abraham. When Abraham leaves his birthplace, he answers a call to personal responsibility. When he fights to rescue his nephew Lot, who is taken captive, he exercises moral responsibility. When he argues with God over the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah, he answers the call to collective responsibility. And when he binds Isaac on the altar, he exercises ontological responsibility. Who was this Abraham? In our Parsha, we're introduced to him with one word that defines him. One word that sets his life course and the destiny of his descendants. Avraham ha-Ivri. Abraham the Hebrew. What does Ivri mean? Some say it's a reference to genealogy, that Abraham was a descendant of Aver, Noah's son. Some say that it's a reference to geography, that Abraham came me'ever hanahar, from the other side of the river, the Euphrates, from Ur Kasdim. Others say that he spoke Ivrit, that he spoke Hebrew. But truly the most compelling, and I think for us the most important explanation, is that Ivri captures Abraham's outlook, his perspective. In the words of the Midrash, the entire world was on one side, and Abraham was on the other. Kol ha'olam me'ever echad, v'hu me'ever acher. Abraham, the iconoclast, stood alone. He was different. He was a nonconformist. He was not taken in by the whims or ways of his neighbors. He carved out a new path for his family and his progeny. Our upcoming scholar and resident, Rabbi Shai Held, draws out the lesson for us, writing, Jews are called upon to be countercultural in the deepest sense, in a culture of materialism, to be animated by the life of the Spirit, in a culture of greed, to embody generosity, in a culture of selfishness, to decenter the ego, in a culture permeated by oppression, to pursue justice, in a culture overrun by inhumanity, to strive for righteousness, in a culture obsessed with self-promotion and branding, to orient our lives around the service of God and service of others. Now, admittedly, it's not easy being an Ivri, to stand apart against the world. We want to feel included. We want to belong, to adopt and to adapt, to assimilate and blend in. And it's understandable. Who wants to be the eternal other, the outsider? It's uncomfortable, and at times has been dangerous. In some ways, this is a role and a position that has been forced on us. But since the days of Abraham, it is one we have been asked to take. It's a position that is reinforced by many of our unique traditions. Shabbat and holidays, kashrut, brit milah, ivrit, kippah, tzitzit, and on and on. And it's a role and a position that we proudly highlight when we list off those Jewish thinkers and leaders and activists who somehow saw the world differently and whose work literally changed the world. Today, this role, this perspective of Ha-Ivri, I would say, is more important than ever. For today, we are called upon to be the outsiders within, gifted with the outsider's ability to see society in ways that insiders cannot. And we should use our vantage point to lift up our blessings, to point out our failings, and to address our shortcomings. Dead fish go with the flow. Live fish swim against the current, writes Rabbi Sachs. So it is with conscience and courage. So it is with the children of Abraham. They are prepared to challenge the idols of the age. For Judaism is the counter voice in the conversation of humankind. As Jews, we do not follow the majority simply because it is the majority. To be a Jew is to be willing to challenge the prevailing consensus, as so often happens when nations slip into worshiping old gods. What are those gods today? Treating a leader or any human being as a savior, pledging ultimate allegiance to a party, pursuing power without restraint, worshiping fame, money, the self. No, we are called upon to search for the truth, to act with honesty, to live with integrity, to pursue justice, to strive for peace, to fight moral failures with moral rigor, and to worship God alone. Now, let me be clear. The message to be a moral compass is independent of the outcome of this last week's election. Our outsider status would have been the same, but the issues very different. I don't know how, as a nation, we start over, how we begin even to heal the divisions, how we set our country, let alone our world, on a course for prosperity, justice, and freedom. The problems are so big and the gaps so large. But whether we like it or not, I believe that what is needed and what is being asked of us is to follow in the footsteps of Avraham HaIvri, and don't underestimate the impact. Abraham, Rabbi Sachs teaches, is without a doubt the most influential person to have ever lived. Today he is claimed as the spiritual ancestor of 2.4 billion Christians, 1.6 billion Muslims, 13 million Jews, more than half the people alive today. And yet he ruled no empire, commanded no great army, performed no miracles, and proclaimed no prophecy. He is the supreme example in all of history of influence without power. Why, Rabbi Sachs asks? Because he was prepared to be different. And for good and bad, forced on us and by our own choice, so must we. Not to do what is expedient and easy, but to do what is right and good. To call out wrongdoings and ethical violations, to uphold justice, to seek peace, to take personal responsibility, moral responsibility, and collective responsibility, that we might establish a more perfect union and a more perfect world, one unto which God looks out and proclaims, Bayar Ki Tov. Tin Ratzon V'Namar. Amen. Same to you.